Here is a fact that might completely blow your mind. Louisa May Alcott never wanted Jo March to get married in Little Women. Not to anyone. She wanted Jo to stay independent, just like she was. But readers wouldn't let it go, and by the time the book was finished, Alcott had written an entirely new chapter just so Jo could have the ending millions of us have loved for over a century and a half. One of the most beloved books ever written wasn't even the book that its own author set out to write. Hi, hello, I'm Mallory Dagger. I am the host of the Writing Your God-Led Book podcast. So excited you're here and so grateful as well. Let's get into it. I want to talk about something today that I think every single writer eventually runs into, whether you're ready or not. It's this moment where the book you sat down to write starts turning into something that you didn't plan on writing at all. Maybe you started with an idea, a clear one even. You knew your topic, you knew your chapters, you probably even had a title picked out before you even wrote a single word. And then, somewhere in the middle of actually writing it, something changed. A chapter you thought would be easy turned out to carry more weight than you expected, or a story you weren't planning to include kept knocking until you finally let it in. The whole shape of the book started moving, not because you were doing anything wrong, it moved because God was doing something else. I think this catches a lot of writers off guard, and honestly, it has caught me off guard too in the past. We tend to think of writing a book as something that we control from start to finish. We make the outline, we follow the outline, we finish the book that matches the outline, but that's not usually how it goes, at least not for the books God actually has his hand in. Proverbs says, "In your hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." That's found in Proverbs 16:9. I think about that verse every time I talk to a writer who's frustrated that their books have changed direction on them. They came in with a plan, a really good plan, even one that honors the Lord, and somewhere along the way, God started establishing the actual steps which did not match the plan that they walked in with. This doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It means that you're writing the kind of book that God actually wants to use, even in a different way than you thought. Isaiah puts his words to why this happens, even though it can feel disorienting at the moment. "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As are the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." We start a book with our own understanding of what it's supposed to be, and God, more often than not, has a slightly different understanding of what it needs to become. It doesn't mean our version is bad, but his version has room for things we cannot see yet from where we started. Imagine holding something valuable in your hands, palms up, fingers loose. You're not gripping onto it, you're not squeezing it shut, you're just holding it, ready to receive whatever is placed there and ready to let go of whatever needs to move on. That's a very different posture than a closed fist. A closed fist protects what's already inside. Open hands are willing to receive something new. I think that's exactly the posture God is asking us to take with our books. Holding your book with open hands doesn't mean you show up without a plan or without conviction or about what you're writing. You still bring your outline. You still bring it to the table. You still bring your best understanding of what this book is supposed to be about. Open hands just means that you hold the plan loosely enough that God can rearrange it without you feeling all discombobulated inside. James talks about this kind of posture towards our own plans. Instead, you ought to say, "If it's the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that." That's not a verse about giving up on planning. That's a verse about planning while remembering who's in charge of the outcome. And here's something I've noticed both in my writing and in the writers that I work with. God doesn't usually bless the book that we walk in with. He transforms it. And more than that, he transforms us while we're writing it. Think about Moses. Moses showed up at the burning bush with a whole list of reasons why he wasn't the right person for the assignment. And God did not argue with him out of every objection with logic. God simply kept telling him, "Moses, I will be with you." And Moses didn't become ready before the assignment started. He became ready while he was already in it, obeying every step that he would take long before he felt qualified. I think too about Peter, who spent an entire night fishing and caught nothing, and then heard Jesus tell him to put his nets down, and again in the same water that he had already tried a million times before. Because you say so, I will let down the nets, Peter answered, and that's found in Luke 5:5. He didn't have a new plan, he didn't have new information, he just had a willingness to try again in obedience just because God said he should. What followed was a catch so large that the nets began to break. I think about that story every time a writer tells me that they have already tried a chapter 3 different ways and it still isn't working. Sometimes the answer isn't a completely new idea, it's letting your hands stay open long enough to try the same water again at his direction instead of your own. And I think the same thing happens with a book. You don't usually finish being the person who can write a book before you start writing it. You become that person somewhere in the middle of chapter 4, when you're forced to sit with something you'd rather avoid and not do. You become that person while you're editing a chapter that hits closer to home than you expected it to. The writing itself is part of how God shapes us, not just a record of who you already were before you started. Paul says something similar about the way God works in us over time. Being confident in this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. And that's found in Philippians 1:6. Your book is not exempt from that process, and neither are you. In a lot of ways, your book is that process playing out every single chapter that you write. I want to say something pretty raw here because I don't think we talk about this part enough. Letting go of your original version for your book actually feels like grief, even if the new direction turns out to be better. You had an idea, you got attached to it, maybe you even told people about it, and now it's asking to become something different. And that adjustment is hard, and it's allowed to feel hard. And a lot of times we grieve, even while you trust that it's good and that God has a plan for it. Sarah laughed when she heard God's plan for her because it didn't match what she and Abraham had already assumed and planned around for years. Her laughter wasn't unbelief exactly. It was more of a human response of someone whose own expectations had just been completely rearranged by something bigger than her. I think a little bit of that laughter or that sigh or that quiet moment of loss, it's allowed to be in that process too. You're allowed to mourn the book you thought you were going to write, even while you open your hands to the one you're being asked to write by God instead. If you're in the middle of a manuscript right now and it's not turning out the way that you originally imagined it, I don't want you to read that as a problem. I want you to consider that it might be exactly what's supposed to happen. Maybe the chapter you didn't plan to write is the one your reader needs most. Maybe the story that you've been avoiding, including this, is the very reason God gave you this assignment in the first place. Maybe the version of the book sitting in your head when you started was never meant to be the final version. It was meant to be the starting point that God would use to lead you somewhere better. Hold your book with open hands, my friend. It means staying willing to follow his leading, even when it means letting go of the outline you were so sure about 6 months ago. It means trusting the God who gave you this assignment in the first place is also the God who knows exactly how it's supposed to end, even on the days when you can't see that far ahead of yourself. So if your book has changed shape on you, welcome to the club. If it's asking more of you than you plan to give or telling you something that you didn't expect to tell, that doesn't mean you're off track. I think it means you're finally close enough to the center of what God is doing that he is able to start doing it. Hold it with open hands, my friend. Let him keep shaping your book and let him keep shaping you while he does it. If you are holding a book right now that keeps changing its shape on you and you don't know what to do with that, I want you to know that you don't have to figure it all out alone in your own head. That's actually part of why I built a Book Clarity Bootcamp. It's not a rigid step-by-step system that locks you into one version of your book before you even understand what it needs to become. It's a self-paced, no live calls, nothing to keep up with, just 5 powerful audio training lessons and a workbook designed to help you find that real, tangible clarity even while your book is still shifting underneath of you. Sometimes what feels like confusion is actually just the process of God rearranging your outline into something better than what you started with. The bootcamp will help you hold on to what's true and let go of what isn't so that you can keep moving forward forward with open hands instead of a closed fist. If that's where you are at today, I'd love for you to check it out. Your book is still worth finishing, even the version that you didn't even plan on writing. All right, Jesus loves you. I love you, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye for now.